G'day everyone, welcome back to the channel. Guess what? It's 2025 speed run time. Let's have a look at the cars. So the good thing is, I've been a fan of the Hornet since day one because it was my first car back in the 80s. I had this little beauty sitting here for a while, but I'm not going to use the Evo, it's for its own thing. Built the Grasshopper on the channel, which here it is right here. And this is my OG Hornet from the early 2000s. Whenever they re-released it around then, I forget what the date was. It was around 2004, 2005, I think. Not sure. Got one instantly and thrashed the living daylights out of this thing. It's been through the wars. It was the body for last year's speed run, hence the holes. Overall, it's held up all right, but it's been used a lot, and I mean a lot. So I've had this new in-box one sitting here for a while, and I've decided I was going to start from fresh, build it nice and new, so there's going to be no worry about plastic being too brittle and old and giving up on a speed run. So I'm going to quickly go through, show you how I'm going to build this and what I'm going to do, and get the chassis at least done. And here's the box open. It's a nice fresh kit. I'm not going to go through an unboxing. There's plenty of unboxing videos out there of a modern day Hornet. But next step will be starting the construction. And here's most of the bits needed for step one, which is the assembling the gearbox internals. One thing about these older kits is you've literally, in this first step, I've had to open 3 of the 4 bags. So that's one thing that improved greatly in future Tamyia kits. But I'll get this gearbox together and we'll have a look at it. Of course, bearings are going in. Might have to rip a couple of bearings out of another kit now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh no, I've got enough bearings there. Beautiful. All right. Next step, you'll see this ready to connect the 2 halves together. Okay, here's the 2 diff halves together. The diff in the middle. Now for lubrication, this, like the speed car from last year, I use Tri-Flow lubricant. I've used this stuff since late 80s in cars. So if anyone's worried about it damaging gears or anything like that, I've never had a problem with it in any gearboxes, Tamyia or other manufacturers. So one thing I will say about these gearboxes is these outside is on the outside bearing holder here. It is kind of tight to get in, and I did use the plastic end of screwdriver just to tap it in so it was dead flat, because they look like they're in, but they've got a little bit more they can go. So just make sure you get them all the way in. All right, next is step 2, which is basically putting the gearbox halves together. And there's the gearbox all in one piece. The thing I like about these gearboxes, doesn't sound the best, but they're very free rolling, which is why they're great for a speed run car. This one sounds actually a bit notchier than what I'm used to sounding. I think that's because one of the bevel gears, one of the small ones in the diff, actually felt a bit tight. It was hard to push the pin through, and it didn't want to really move that easy. But after a run or two, that'll wear off, and this will become super smooth. And that'll be the test runs anyway. So on to step 3. So for starting, I'm just going to use the standard Tamyia motor just to get a baseline run, because I am running the brush class, by the way, again. And then I'll just go up with motors and tyre size and that from then on. So next will be step 3. While I'm putting the motor in, one little tip. Even though on the instructions up here they give you a reference for how far to space the motor, and that's fine. Go get yourself a ruler and just measure that distance. Let's see how I did. I just threw this on from memory of how Hornets are, and yeah, it's literally like 1 millimeter off what they say. But even still, if you want to double check before you put the cover on and the screws, you can just literally sit the motor in there and hold it flush, and you can physically see how it's lined up. And even though, oh no, now I can see it is a touch over. But yeah, if you don't want to go measuring, just look at it before you fully tighten it up, and you'll be able to see how far on or off you are. Because you do want to get these soft pinions fully onto that spur gear so it's got the maximum amount of strength that it can have against the other gear, and it's not going to prematurely wear on one part of it. Alright, that's pretty good now. I'm happy with that. Okay, and there's the gearbox together. Motor's turning nicely with the gears and the shock mounts on. Now, one thing, I'm getting to the chassis now. About to come out with that bit. But one thing I'm considering is leaving off the Hornet sliding gearbox mounts that let it do that clack noise, and actually putting on the Grasshopper's solid ones. Because I actually find, if anything, the Grasshopper variant actually works a bit better without the whole pivot than the Hornet. Because all the Hornet done is when you're on power, is snap up and then holds there in the same spot as what it would if it was down here held in spot. So considering doing that, plus it'll be a bit less weight getting rid of the metal tube and the bigger plastic part. But I'll have to rip that off my Grasshopper or go get another plastic tree set for the Grasshopper to do that. But seriously considering doing that. So step 4, start putting the chassis together. Okay, so there's the gearboxes attached, and as I said, I went with the Grasshopper mounts to get rid of that clacking noise, number 1, and number 2, we're going a straight line, we're not doing jumps and stuff, so the less chance, especially when you get a more powerful motor, of it wanting to torque, should actually help it, I hope. So I just ripped them off my Grasshopper and put the ones from this onto the Grasshopper to keep it all in one piece. And yeah, on with the shocks, which I am using the standard Tamyia ones. No point going aftermarket for this. Okay, and there's the shocks done. Decided not to use the extra spacer, which is something I've never done with Hornet shocks. I didn't even realise there was an option. These bottom bits, the hardest I've ever found on a Hornet. They just did not want to screw on at first. I was lucky I've got the good shaft holders to get a good grip and really force it on there, but they went, and then made sure that I got the length the same way, so they were all screwed all the way in. Alright, so next will be step 10, putting these on the chassis. And there's the rear end, all the shocks connected. As I said, got rid of that clacking noise, even though it still makes a bit of noise. And that'll do for a speedrun car. Alright, on to the next step, which is putting the servo into the front end. And as you may have noticed as well, I've left the side guards off, the rails that come out. Once again, for speedrun, not really needed. And I've got some biggish tyres coming, they might get in the way, so it's decided for his weight, and they're not really needed. Same with the bumper, I'm not going to put that on, they're not needed. So alright, let's go find the servo and put this in. Okay, before I go chucking the radio in, which I'm going to be using pretty much all the parts out of last year's speedrun car, because it's just sitting there doing nothing now. And this speed controller, while I didn't put in the fastest motor I had, it handled what I had, and it's meant to handle down to the motor I want to put in. The only new part will be this servo. I've gone for the shorty just to give a bit of extra wire room, as I tried fitting in a full-size lipo, and with a bit of dremeling just here at the back of the chassis, it could have fit in, but the shorty pack fits in really nicely anyway. So it stops at those actual cut-offs to put a bit of the weight more centered. So I'm just going to go with that, and the shorty servo, as I said, to keep the wires out of the way. Even though I'm sure the full-size one would only go to about here, but still rather have it totally out of the way. And there's the servo in with the steering arms. One of the least favourite jobs, because they're so small, it's sort of painful on the fingers, but all done. The body mount on. For anyone who's not sure, the Tamyia tool actually will hold, get on there, is the same size as that, so you can use that and then screw it from the bottom. Don't forget that bit, because if you do, you have to take off all the front arms to put it on. And talking about the front arms, once I get the rest of the radio in, which I'll do in this step, next bit is getting the arms ready. Okay, so here's the arms pretty much done. And keen-eyed will notice that instead of using the metal flange nuts that they want you to use on this lower screw, they actually give you plastic ones, which are on the A tree. Over here you'll see there's some plastic flange nuts. Well, they're not flange nuts, they're just plastic nuts. And I'm pretty sure these are used on the grasshopper instead of the metal ones. I've never had a problem with them. They work very well for what they're intended, just to hold basically the screw on. And because it's locking itself, because it's a plastic nut, you don't have to do this up super tight, so it remains nice and free. With the metal one, you sort of have to do it up a bit tighter, and it can squish this a little bit, and then, you know, it can come loose. The other thing I did was put the ball stud on the inside hole, just to reduce the amount of travel. So, well, actually, I think it will reduce the travel. Might increase it, but we'll see, because I'll see how it goes, because I want it to have a little bit of toe out. A bit of toe out. So I want it to pull in, and it's hard to get the standard steering rods to do that. So we'll see how this goes. I'll get this on, and then we'll see the front end once I've got the shocks on, assembled. And there's the front end done. I've put the second O-ring on the top, to lower it just a touch, and so it also doesn't make that clacky noise when the suspension does move. I've just used the one O-ring in the top so it can flex, and screwed these down, the screws as tight till they stop, so it's as low as possible for the moment. So that's the front end. Okay, next is basically wheels, tires and body, and you can check my grasshopper video if you want to see how to do these wheels. I'm going to probably put the old ones off my Hornet on it for the moment, just for the initial runs, and then I'll see after that what I can get to fit onto this car. So I'll be back when it's all in one piece, when the body and wheels are on. And here's where it's up to. Pretty much finished. Not doing anything flash with the body. Stickers, it can just cause wind drag. These wheels and tyres are just for the moment, just to sit it there. So yeah, that's it for the build pretty much. As I said, got other wheels and tyres coming. Got other motors that I can use. Next thing will be its first run just on the standard power to get a baseline speed. And then, yeah, go from there. So thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video for the first speed run.